look at the issues that we have to canvass for you this morning. We are looking at judgment debts, we are looking at ministerial vettings, and we are looking at the election petition so far. My guest, joining us by Zoom, Dr. Ernest Kofi Abochi. He's Dean, UPSA Law Faculty. Also joining us by Zoom will be Kofi Bento, lawyer and Senior Vice President, Imani Africa. Here in the studio right now are Inusa Fuseni, lawyer and member National Democratic Congress, NDC. He's a former MP and a former minister. Also, Dr. Poko Dusay, member New Patriotic Party, NPP, legal and communications team. Gentlemen, here in the studio and on Zoom, good morning and welcome to NewsFile.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Great. So we are beginning with the vetting that has happened so far, and quite a number of people have gone through, but we do not know what the report to Parliament will be, whether anybody will be rejected, or whether there will be anything that will be demanded of anybody. Let's show you just one bit, so just a bit of some excerpt, and have our guest comment on the vetting. Is it really necessary? That's the most important question.
Media Foundation for West Africa, is that the name? Based its report on wrongful analysis of whatever information that they have. They were wrong, they drew their own conclusions to it, and they said whatever they wanted to say. I referred whatever communication I received from any entity to the regulator to respond to, and I believe the regulator did so.
You mean that it is NCA that wrote to you telling you that Media Foundation for West Africa had based the analysis on wrong information, or your office did that?
If the court says that any entity without valid authorization ought to be sanctioned in accordance with the law, and the Media Foundation for West Africa claims that that is an infringement on the right of free expression, they have a problem with the decision of the court, not with the action of the regulator or the directives of the minister. And they also need to get their facts aligned with the situation on the ground. Every action that the NCA took was in accordance with the decision of the tribunal and their regulations. So that can, by no stretch of the imagination, be claimed as infringing upon the rights of any entity in this country. If that's the conclusion they arrived at, they were wrong.
The government of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo had created approximately 1 million jobs. And even though I don't have the exact figures for end of 2020, the last time we reported on was in September 2020, and then the figure was around 3 million jobs. 3 million jobs. Yes.
How was the 3 million jobs created and the distribution? You want to share the statistics with us, sector by sector?
I will make the details available to the committee when I get back to you. But I think that I have, on a number of occasions, even come to this house and have given these figures out already. But if still it is the pleasure of the committee to have the details, I'm more than willing to.
And Chairman, another clarification: the 3 million jobs, public sector or private sector, or a combination of the two?
Combination of all.
The nominee said in September the government has created 3 million jobs. On 13th August, the Vice President also said that the government has created 2 million jobs. 2 million jobs, 13th August. That was what the Vice President said, that the government has created 2 million jobs. And you're also saying that in September, you have created 3 million jobs. Is it that between August and September, you created additional 1 million jobs?
Well, I don't know, and I'm not aware of what you're talking of, but I have officially turned out the 3 billion jobs, and I will be prepared to defend the 3 million at any point in time, that when I get the opportunity.
I have deep respect for our chieftaincy institution, for that matter, our traditional rulers, and I've intimated here the role they have in ensuring that we have an enduring local government system, and how we should allow them to take serious part in it. I've also talked about how the work His Excellency assigned to us in this regional reorganization, which is a very delicate assignment. We could succeed in doing that because of how the chiefs throughout the country supported us and rely on their wisdom and direction. But having said that, it's unfortunate that I will have to state that this allegation is coming out of a deep misunderstanding, or it has no basis at all. The process of creating new regions is enshrined in the Constitution. And on a different question, I made reference to Chapter 2 of the Constitution, Article 5, 4 and 5. And Article 5 states clearly the process you go through when you are creating a new region or when you are merging two regions.
Ghana pays the lowest rate in the whole world. Ghana, we pay the lowest rate in the whole world. So if you want to go...
You say rate in what?
Yes, toll rate.
Oh, okay, the toll rate.
If you want to go BOT, OOT, or whatever rate, as we see in other parts of the world, the research that has been done in my ministry on the average toll rate is around $1. And Ghana, $1 is close to 6 cities. But here, people pay 50 pesos for toll rate. And if I am giving the approval, it's one of the things I'm going to do immediately. And it has to go to cabinet first, proposal of increasing the toll rate, and it will come to this honorable house. And I believe all of you, everybody here will support it, and Ghanaians will also accept it.
Right, so those are just a few of those who appeared before the committee. You know several others who appeared before the committee. So starting with you, Kofi Bento, what would you say about the process itself, those MPs who form the committee and their performance, whether they are doing the right thing, they are doing good enough, or they are not, and the appointees who appeared, the nominees who appeared, if any specific ones you want to also comment about, that will be fine. But let me begin by sharing this small piece of Going to the Town, the writings of P.A.V. Ansah, the writings of P.A.V. Ansah. And in chapter 12 of his book, he has a title, The Shameful, Shoddy, Shabby Charade, Misnomered Vetting. And he took issue with a very poor vetting process that went on, with the intention of letting someone off by perhaps not inquiring into issues that were to the disfavor of that person. in a committee, Parliament's Accounts Vetting Committee, Appointment Committee, as chaired by Ibn Chambers then. Yes, Kofi Bento, let's hear you. Hello, Kofi Bento. Please unmute.
Hello, Samson, do you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Hello?
I can hear you now. Let's go.
It's unmuted.
Yeah, so let's go. You can be heard now.
It's unmuted. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Right. The process, quickly, the process is fine. And as you can tell, we've been using this process since the Fourth Republic started. Now, the content, what goes on, at every point, there is, one way or something that, somebody wants to complain about. The only thing I find needful, something that we need to do regarding the process, is to make sure that we give the persons who have been appointed the questions ahead of the vetting. I feel very strongly about it. It is possible that before the vetting comes, there's a schedule. We know who is coming. Members on the committee should staff and do it. And at least each person should send maybe 4 or so questions. Okay, it doesn't mean you have to ask all of them, but at least the main questions you want to ask, if you want some information about something that happened in the past, and a few things, whether the person was already in office or not, we should send the questions to these people so they prepare and come and give answers according to the information that they have, especially people who were in office and are being returned to office. So I think we should seriously look at that. It is giving them room to say, I'm not aware, to say, let me go and. So we should make sure we do that. The only other thing that I want to say is that you can see from the attitude of some of the persons, the appointees, that there were times they got irritated. There were times they got almost angry. There were times they were throwing answers back to the members, on the panel.
Example?
It must be clear for everyone to understand that.
Example?
I will rather not give examples because it will mean mentioning names, and I don't want to go there because we'll get into the weeds.
But we should do that. We should do that. Dr. Akutwe-Friye yesterday, Esla.
Yes, I think Dr. Akutwe-Friye.
Matthew Poku-Prempeh.
Yeah, I think there were times they felt. Yes, there were times some of them felt as if, or they sounded as if, they were being harassed, as if, who are you to ask me that question? And they gave all kinds of answers, which, if you consider things in terms of the philosophy of this whole thing, those people questioning them are questioning them on behalf of citizens. The office of the citizen is the
what is wrong?
Office.
What is
they
wrong?
Are appointees.
Kofi Bento, what is wrong if the questioner is ignorant? The questioner is showing ignorance, and you need to put them right. And yet they may be wrong and strong. So you, the one to answer the questioning, what is wrong with, letting them know that they are wrong and they ought not be strong?
There is nothing wrong with saying a question is inappropriate or wrong, or even correcting the question. I remember when, as a lecturer, somebody brought me questions from another lecturer trying to get me to help. And the question was wrong. So I actually wrote to that lecturer and said, please consider this. And they admitted that the question was wrong. So there are times when questions are wrong. The whole thing is the attitude. I think that people come to this thing and they are looking at the person asking the question. They should look at the citizens behind. It's similar to being interviewed by a journalist. Whenever you are interviewed by a journalist, you're actually speaking to the nation. So I think those who present themselves for appointment must appreciate that. But that will also be proven in whether the parliamentarians reject some people or not. And I think that if some of these things happen, people will sit up and come to appreciate the process better. But the more important thing is that...
Are you saying, you will get to the more important, I won't forget because you label it as more important. Are you saying that you have an expectation that some of the nominees will be rejected?
I have a hope that some of the nominees who do not they are fit for the job will be rejected by the panel members because that is their job. I mean, if you are there to just approve, there's no for the job. For whatever reason, I think it is your duty to signal that to the person who is appointing. So I do have a hope that some people will be returned, and it's happened before in our history. So yes,
an example or two of those that, having followed yourself, you'll be disappointed if the committee did not disapprove of them.
There are people I have not been very impressed with. There are people I have not been very impressed with, and there are people I have been impressed with. And there are many situations where I feel the persons must be made to come back to answer certain questions before they are approved. And again, I'm resisting your invitation to mention names.
Okay, so you said you were coming to a most important part. That's maybe your final comment here before we get other people.
Most important part is this. Qualification per se is not an issue. And I've already said that if they find the people unqualified, they should reject them. But qualification is not an issue because the system, the law, makes it the but it is should be about that. To that extent, therefore, this issue about English language. Look, mastery of any language is a measure of intelligence, but that is not the only measure of intelligence. What has to be picked up is that apart from the fact that the person has a problem with a language, because if you can't express yourself in English, and that is our official language, if you cannot make sense, if you cannot understand or speak it well, it signals something. Now, what we should look for is whether there are other signals showing that thing. If it suggests that you are not on top of the job or you don't know the brief very well, is there any other thing that you are showing us to make us believe that maybe you are not fit for the job? And in certain cases, it was clear that it's not just the language that the people did not have. It is the fact that they did not understand the substance very well. I think it is for Parliament to send those people and for the president to insist that he wants them to get into office. Too many times we have too many people in high office who do nothing, and some of them actually work against our progress. That is the purpose of this vetting. So when it comes out this clearly, I think we must take steps to try and at least do something to rectify that situation. There were situations like in the case of Kojo Oponkroma, who I thought did very well. But again, yes, there were questions that may not have been answered well, etc. But you can tell clearly that he was on top of his job. And that gives me some confidence, especially also because of his youth, you know. So we are not here to disgrace people or rubbish people. That process is very useful, especially for those who have already been in office. It is one unique chance for them to give record. The most important thing is we should amend it and send the questions to them ahead so they cannot dodge the question.
Let's get some other views on what you are trying to say, but let me begin with Inusa in the studio on this note. The reference to people trying to measure the competence of people by how fluent they are in English or articulate. The case of Hawa Kumsin. Is it her problem that she can't express herself well in English? And should that be a measure for the mockery, the ridicule? What do you think about how she's being ridiculed and mocked in town? Now, your standing orders, Order 47, says the proceedings of Parliament shall ordinarily be conducted in the English language, except that a member may exercise the option to address the House in either Akan, Nzema, Ga, Ewe, Hausa, Dagbani, Dagari, or in any other local language, provided facilities exist in the House for its interpretation. Don't you think that if you had operationalized this and applied it to nominees who are appearing before you, Hawa Kumsin could have expressed herself far better than what happened?
Thank you, Samson, and let me say good morning to Dr. Eduse and your US. He was my lecturer at the LLM level. Now, the provision you've read in the Standard Orders clearly is for a forward-looking provision. I mean, anybody who has taken a trip to the European Parliament will see exactly what the provision is meant to address. It's a recognition of the fact that we speak many languages. Proficiency in one language should not be a criteria for limiting you to expressing yourself on the floor of the House. And so the provision looks to make room for people who can speak other languages, express themselves better, to be able to do so, and enjoins Parliament to provide facilities for the purposes of achieving that objective. And so clearly it's a forward-looking provision. We've not gotten there yet. I mean, there have not been attempts to operationalize this. And that is the challenge.
You see one harm. When she was being asked questions, something that she has said and didn't mean it that way in the media had been used against her and the government for a very long time. But on the floor, when she was asked the question, she had the opportunity to explain that she has a problem with the English language, and that is not what she meant. But for that opportunity, that issue would have been stuck against her. So why are we still here when your standing order says that people should be able to express themselves in the language that they are comfortable with, and yet they come, and you yourselves, even among your members, there are people expressing the hope that some of them should be allowed to be able to speak in the language they are comfortable with.
Yeah, exactly. And so probably what we should be calling on Parliament to do, and what we should be calling on the state to do, is to provide facilities that will enable people to be able to express themselves in languages that they are comfortable with, so that their speeches, their comments, and their debates can be interpreted simultaneously. I mean, anytime you are in the European Parliament, I mean, I was for a long time a member of the EU ACP Joint Parliamentary Assembly, and anytime you started speaking, you would see simultaneous interpretation of your speech in many languages, and if they didn't have the facility for that, they were announced. And because of the unique nature of Europe, in countries, except probably Britain, even in Britain, you find people who can speak English and French fluently, and because of the nature of the evolution of the country. And so sometimes when they are unable to provide German or Dutch, normally they will be able to provide German, maybe not Dutch. Those who speak Dutch can understand some aspects of it. But because of national issues, they really always prefer that their languages be part of those that are available for interpretation.
Okay.
But let me disagree slightly with Bentel. Bentel, qualification is an issue. Proficiency in English is not an issue, but qualification is an issue, and it's stated in Article 78. And it reads, Ministers of State shall be appointed by the President with the prior approval of Parliament for among members of Parliament or persons, underlined, qualified to be appointed members of Parliament. So qualification is an issue.
But the qualification is clear. So qualification is qualification to be member of Parliament.
Scipio Gabriel, when he appeared before the vetting committee in 1992, he was qualified. He could speak English. His proficiency in English was above board. He was good. He explained himself, but he failed to meet the qualification criteria because he was not a registered voter. He was a citizen of Ghana, but he was not a registered voter. Vicky Odoy, you remember? She was in London, and so no one could fault her on her English. But she was not a registered voter. Now, so qualification is an issue. You must be qualified to be a member of Parliament. Probably that explains why in the 1969 Constitution, they did not vet them, because all ministers of state or cabinet ministers of state were from Parliament. And so they would have been qualified to be members of Parliament. That qualification was there. they should be members of parliament. But this constitution clearly states, and just like the 1979 constitution, clearly states that it must be with the prior approval of parliament. But let me backtrack a little.
So before you backtrack, once you put an emphasis on qualification, and the qualification is limited to being qualified to be a member of parliament, the next question is, what does, chapter 10 say about who is qualified to be a member of parliament? And does it include being fluent in English or whatever it is?
That is why I said, Samson, proficiency in the English language is not an issue.
Okay.
But you must otherwise be qualified under Article 94 to be appointed as a minister.
Right.
And Article 94 has 5 provisions. 5 provisions.
Okay.
Any person who is nominated by the president for vetting must satisfy all the requirements in Article 94.
Yes, so 1, you must be Ghanaian.
You must be Ghanaian.
You must be 21 years and above.
You must be a registered voter.
Good.
You must pay all your taxes or make arrangements to pay your taxes. You must not be disqualified because you owe allegiance to another country.
That's right.
You must not be adjudged or declared bankrupt.
Correct.
Or of unsound mind. Or detained as a criminal lunatic under any of the laws of Ghana.
You must not have been
convicted of high crime under the Constitution for any other offense punishable by death or by sentence of not less than 10 years. You must not have been convicted for an offense involving or connected with elections in Ghana, or found by a committee, a report of a committee of inquiry to be incompetent to hold public office.
Or an offense punishable by death.
By death.
Or by sentence not less than 10 years.
You understand? So there are many.
So these are the things you are looking for in the vetting.
So first of all, the members of the committee exercising their oversight jurisdiction over the executive have a responsibility to ensure that all persons who appear before them satisfy the minimum criteria, qualification criteria in the Constitution.
Following the process so far, do you find that the committee members have a mind fixed on these provisions in the questions they ask?
Well, the committee members maybe have a mind fixed on it. I can't speak for them, but I know that, and most of them have been on the committee for a very long time. And just recently, I was with them at Adan, and I drew their attention to the oversight responsibility of the appointment committee in ensuring that members nominated by the president satisfy the minimum conditions in the Constitution.
So when they are vetting people who are already MPs, what should they then do? Because the qualification is limited.
So then you come to the other leg. And these are part of the jurisprudential or doctrinal principles enunciated by J.S. Mill and Montesquieu. Now, you want to curtail impunity, that the president can just throw anybody at you. Why is Parliament invited to vet those people? You know, as a matter of governance, that the executive is responsible for policy and programs, implementation of policies and programs. To be able to implement those policies and programs, they come up with a budget, and that budget must be funded. And the funding of the budget is from the taxes of the people. And it is Parliament that keeps the purse. So Parliament has a duty to satisfy itself that the person who is appearing, apart from satisfying the minimum conditions, is trustworthy, is competent enough, first of all, to understand and implement government policy, and two, to be prudent in the utilization of the public purse in the implementation of those policies.
What have you observed from what is going on now that you feel requires some tweaking, some change? And what are your expectations? Do you expect that any of those who have gone through so far will be rejected?
I have my doubt whether they'll be rejected. I have my doubt.
Not a single person?
Not a single person. Because all I hear is about people talking about the fact that somebody has not been able to speak English, or somebody doesn't understand exactly the portfolio he has been given. But you must not take it away from the president that he had a minimum assessment of the capacity of his nominees to deliver on his policy. And that's why he nominated them in the first place. And so you must credit the president with some modicum of intelligence in putting people, it's like a chess game, in putting people in places to be able to push through his programs and policies. Now, the parliament then has the responsibility to ensure that they throw light on what they believe is the inadequacies of the nominee. It is the president who now then has the prerogative to withdraw. Or if he fails to meet the legal requirement in the Constitution, then Parliament will vote to reject on the basis of the fact that he fails to meet the minimum requirement in the Constitution.
The committee cannot reject.
The committee can reject, can recommend the withdrawal of that person in the case of Sifio Gavra, in the case of Vicky Ode. But the committee normally determines the fate of a nominee on 3 levels by consensus. All the members, 26 members of the committee agree that that minister nominee is otherwise qualified to be appointed minister. That's by consensus. Unanimous. Some do not agree. No, unanimous. All of them agree. Consensus. Some do not agree. But they reach a consensus that they must let that person go.
And the last one is?
The last one is by voting. We call it by division. Some say, no, we will not approve on the basis of A, B, C, D. Then they put it to a vote. That does not resolve the matter. That is the committee's report. Then the committee report will not come before the House for debate. And then a vote. Immediately, at the committee level, there's a division. There's voting. On the floor of the House, they will be voted. You remember Mohamed Mumuni?
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for that education. So, Dr. Foucault, what do you think about, first, the committee and how it is going about its work? There are those who say the work appears to have been left to the minority and the majority members are not needed.
Well, good morning, and good morning to my honorable colleague, Honorable Inusa. You know, I've listened to their submissions, and in trying to summarize it, I will say that it falls within the provinces of what I call formal qualifications and then essential qualifications.
Okay.
There are legal requirements that every nominee must meet. And then when you set out what the Constitution says, those are the essential ones. But we seem to dwell so much on the formal aspects. That is the reason why we are now pontificating and asking whether some should be rejected, others should be accepted, and that kind of thing. Mr. Bento even made a point that mastery of the Queen's language is a measure of intelligence.
Okay.
I disagree strongly in that you may need to go through some processes, formal processes, to master the Queen's language. And my mother didn't get the opportunity. But she's one of the most intelligent traders that I've ever come across. So when it comes to that execution, it's not about, and let's also be cognizant of the portfolios the persons are going to hold. You know, the fisheries ministry, the subjects and objects of that ministry, and the persons you'll be engaged with.
What is the focus of the fisheries ministry?
I'm telling you that it is not about mastery of English language. Not at all. In fact, mastery of Ga and Chi may even serve you a better purpose. Mastery of Ghana in particular. And that's for Tree, because from the coastal areas, yes, yes. May serve you a better purpose than English language. So let's try to dichotomize between the Queen's language. I know people who are so fluent. The eloquence in the English language is impeccable, but when it comes to performance, they are found wanting. So that is where I want us to draw that kind of line. I know that some are essential, others are just mere formalities. So the person's ability to discharge the job should be the overriding consideration in deciding whether it should be passed or not. And you asked whether the majority is just sleeping whilst the minority is doing this work. I'm expecting that they all do the work together. But of course, it is natural that you don't put someone you are in the same political party in the wrong spot. I mean, it happens. Otherwise, you are undermining your political party decision to put the person across as a candidate.
You may be questioning the president's,
Well, the president can be questioned.
Judgment.
No one has that problem. And I don't think the president will even want to run things and not allow anybody to actually question him. Because as you say, if you are charting a path, you may not know where your back is crooked. So they may not go all out as the minority may do. And it is natural. If they were in government, the same approach would have been adopted. But I expect them that they are all diligent in
that regard,
the execution of their task.
In that regard, should the standing orders be changed so that you have only the opposition or the minority in parliament doing this kind of job rather than having the majority members join?
I don't think so.
Since they clearly will not do anything,
I don't think so.
That they are questioning the president's judgment.
I don't think so. And the reason is simple. If you look at all the committees of parliament, it is composed of sides.
Yeah, we know that. I'm only asking what you think.
And we don't want this to be an exception. We want it to be that both majority, minority, independents are available to serve on committees. And this is one of the committees of parliament, which I believe should work together in a collaborative way.
Well, that question, Honorable Minister Hussein, what do you think about it?
It's always so. It's a fallout of our experiment, our project which is to establish a constitution that's a hybrid between the presidential and the parliamentary systems of government. And even in the review report on the Constitutional Review Commission, they did stated that because the president appoints members of his government, a majority of members of his government from parliament, it robs members of parliament the ability to develop careers in parliament, and also the capacity of parliament to hold the executive accountable. And that is the problem. I have been in parliament for close to 16 years, and I can tell you, sometimes it beats your imagination that you are scrutinizing government as parliament and a member of parliament, while part of the committee doing that appreciates exactly what you are doing, but is forced by circumstances of the constitution and the arrangement to speak for government. It always happens. And so, yes, I think that, and that is why I have spoken vociferously, that probably we were in haste, Doctor, to create this constitutional architecture that is turning out to be our Achilles heel. Well, because that was only a single experience in the Third Republic. That was just a single experience. And in this world now, yes, our unique contribution to democracy is this hybrid system of government. But then it operates to weaken parliaments. The whip system.
Why don't you apply the same reasoning and judgment behind that committee that sees to the Auditor General's report, Public Accounts Committee,
good,
where you allow the minority to chair Why don't you apply? Is there not a reason for allowing the minority to chair that committee? And why don't you put that reason, that same reason, allow that reason to dictate for the appointment committee?
Thank you so very much. Exactly so that the Parliament thought that the standing orders of Parliament needed review, and that some committees of Parliament ought to be chaired by the minority. And one such committee was the Appointments Committee. In these standing orders, the Appointments Committee is chaired by the first Deputy Speaker, who is named in the standing orders. And the first Deputy Speaker by convention is a member of the ruling party. So clearly, you will find that government is sitting as chairman over its nominees. And so, yes.
But relative to this first Deputy Speaker, you would find that at the Appointments Committee, he doesn't appear to be doing a party job.
Because he's well aware that there will be a public perception that because he's a member of the MPP, he's doing the bidding. In fact, I've read Jifa Bampo's post. Says next time she's going for an interview, she'll carry the man along. And that spoke volumes to me. But what I'm just saying is that Honorable Joe Osewusu knows very well that there is a public perception out there. And what he's doing at the committee level is managing that public perception. And that's why...
So he's doing very well at it.
He's doing very well at it.
I'm not thinking alone in it. Now, Kofi Bento wants to come in. Hello, Kofi. Yes, Kofi, let's hear you.
Yes. So I think it's important for us to get this. There must be both parties in Parliament when it comes to appointment, because our Constitution makes it the prerogative of the President. And I think the majority or the President's party person must chair. Otherwise, we undermine that prerogative. That is one. Number two, these vettings are not to expose or disgrace people. So we must not look at it in such an adversarial manner. I think that the President's members being there can serve to, bring up certain things which may be positive. If we leave it to just the minority or the people against the President, then it will become this antagonistic, vilification of people.
Why?
So
will the public also not know if the minority is doing a witch hunt, doing a bad job, doing a job that is not progressive and not constructive? Will we not know, and would they not be afraid when they do that if they also happen to have the opportunity to come to government, they will be paid back?
Yes, so the public will know, but the thing is this: you will defeat the President's mandate. And when the public knows, or the court of public opinion, we will know what we know and we will believe what we believe. But at the end of the day, the decisions will not be made by the public, to be made by the people who are sitting there. And indeed, we should not make it an antagonistic process. That thing must be emphasized. We are trying to bring out what the people have, which qualifies them. Even if they don't have a mastery of the language, they should be able to prove to us that they have a mastery of the substance.
Okay, Dr. Bochi just joined us.
That it should be just one-sided.
Dr. Bochi just joined us, and I'm going to him. But Kofi, I'd like you to take a look at what Dr. Pukweduse spoke about the formal qualification, emphasis on formal qualification rather than the essential qualifications. And he brought in an analogy saying, speaking Ga and Akan may be of better use to such a minister for the fisheries ministry than your English language, which you say competency in that is a measure of competence, if you like. Now, what is the job of the fisheries minister? Is it to engage the fisher folk, or it is to help Ghanaians get fish to eat? The current fisheries industry is dying because we are running out of fish. That is a scientific problem, not a propaganda problem. The president should be hiring people who can help solve the problem. Because if we run out of fish, no amount of Ga, Ewe, or Fanti will help bring them back. And that's from someone who is watching us. Yes, what do you say?
Yes, I was thinking the same thing. I just didn't have the opportunity. Respectfully, Doc is wrong. A minister's position is essentially policy, helping the president to manage that sector, helping to formulate policy, helping to implement policy. Very little of that position involves engaging fisher folk. There may be 5% or so. Indeed, if the minister spends her time, even 15% of it, engaging fisher folk, she is wasting executive time. There must be many people within the ministry to do that. Today, the challenges in the fishing industry have little to do with speaking a local language. They have everything to do with technology. People are fishing with sonar, with all kinds of technology which our people don't have. The canoes we are using were the same things being used 10,000 years ago. We need to figure out how to move from there. Today, fishing has to do with international relations, sharing fish stock. People are coming from China to fish here. It is a high-level diplomatic challenge. Fishing has to do with security, management of naval security, being able to put people on the sea to monitor who is fishing your waters, who has the license, who does not, and helping. And it has to do with fish management. That is a lot of science.
But there are directors, there are directors and experts within the ministry, are they not?
But that's the point. So the minister must be managing these directors and all those other people. And very little of that work has to do with speaking Chi and Fanti. So on that, I think the doc got it wrong. The point I'm making is that...
you want to say you disagree with him. You keep repeating he got it wrong.
But that may not be enough here. Well, the point is this. The qualification is actually not a subject matter qualification. The qualification is about eligibility qualification to be a parliamentarian.
Okay.
When it comes to qualification, the earlier point I was making is that it is entirely the prerogative of the president to determine who he believes is qualified.
All right.
And
let me bring in Dr. Abochi here. Doc, I'll ask you the substantive matters of the constitutional arrangement, including, for example, whether you thought it will not be better for the appointing authority to put up more than one person to be vetted for a particular portfolio, and then the vetting committee will determine which one of the people that he has put up is better qualified. But since my guests all seem to have a focus on the fisheries ministry, obviously because of what happened with Hawa Kumsin, from where you sit, clearly we shouldn't have a problem with whether she's articulate in English or not. But did she come across as having shown herself approved on the substance?
Well, good morning. In order to understand this, I think it is first of all useful to put everything in context and to ask, what is the whole point of the exercise? The vetting exercise, as I understand it from the constitutional standpoint, is to achieve three things. One, to deal with the issue of capacity. Two, to deal with the issue of credibility. And then three, to deal with the issue of eligibility. In the issue of capacity, the committee is supposed to check whether or not a proposed appointee has the capacity to deliver the mandate of his office or her office. In respect of eligibility, which I think is probably the most important preliminary issue, is to check whether a person is qualified from the constitutional standpoint and whether there are any elements that bars the person from being appointed, from a constitutional standpoint. And then in terms of credibility, to check whether or not the person has the integrity to step in public office, among others. So if you put these three things together, it is on that basis I think you can measure whether or not a proposed appointee who has appeared before the committee has been able to discharge himself effectively in terms of the questions that are asked. As regards the question of whether or not substantively she can do what she's been appointed to do, I think the language is only a medium or one variable of assessing that. Now, the reason language has become important in Ghana, I think, is because invariably English is our official medium of communication. And because English has become an indicia of education, English has become substituted for education itself, which unfortunately is wrong, because in reality, somebody can be very well schooled in other technical aspects of education without really being proficient in English. But because English is the medium for carrying out the proficiency of whatever a person professes, once the person is not able to express himself or herself in English, the person is taken on the face of it to not be as literate as would be expected. But one can still be very effective or very competent without being articulate in the English language. And the question is whether, we look at whether or not the person actually has substantive knowledge in a particular field. Again, my understanding, and to be honest, I didn't actually watch the fullness of the particular proceeding. But my understanding from everything I'm hearing about is that it appears that even substantively speaking, the proposed appointee was sufficient. That appears to be some of the trolling and the fun people are making about her.
All
so
right.
Since I didn't actually follow myself, I can't make my own judgment in respect of that. But if she was substantively proficient, then the fact that her English wasn't as coherent and fluent as other people expect, that of itself will not be of any moment. But if she wasn't substantively proficient and she was deficient in that respect,
if you have been following also, and you are coming to the question I had posed earlier but deferred. If you have been following also, what do you make of the type of questions that we hear and the posture of those who are asking the questions? For example, if you look at Haruna Idrisu, does it come across as he's asking questions but he's not expecting an answer because he appears to be rushing them and not waiting for an answer? They attempt to answer, then he begins with another question.
I think that there appears to be a lot of background historical expectations on both sides of the divide. And I'm saying on both sides of the divide in terms of the NDC and the MPP, and also in respect of the appointees, the proposed appointees themselves. And the historical factors I'm speaking about is the background political contextual issues that nobody is really mentioning, but everybody understands are at play. So there are political tensions. There are all kinds of background variables that we may or may not be aware of. And again, this is not peculiar to Ghana. Everywhere in the world, and let's say the mature democracies, appointments represent a good platform sometimes to vent political vendetta and to take things on proposed appointees in terms of things they may have done in their other political life or in a political life in respect of which the mandate is being renewed. So when I listen to some of the questions, just as you indicated, and when I listen to the whole body language and the posture, not just from the NDC, but actually also from the NPP, you get a sense that sometimes these background contextual dynamics are at play. And unfortunately, it gets played out against proposed appointees, especially where they are not themselves the people who may have behaved in particular ways that may justify that. But, a particular a person doing the vetting may just have had an opportunity or a platform to vent. On the other hand, a proposed appointee's behavior, either in previous office or in some other political life, may have given an opportunity for a person doing the vetting to then pick it up on the person and ask questions that they think now may have given them the spotlight to not necessarily embarrass, but probably just to take it out on people who may have presented themselves. So political vetting or parliamentary vetting has always been an opportunistic platform sometimes for vetting and for exploiting and taking things down.
Now, Dr. Abuchi,
I'm not saying that is what happened, but I'm just saying these are things that actually
now to the suggestion about whether it will serve us better if the appointing authority put up more than one person for consideration for a particular portfolio.
I think from a practical standpoint, two things. First of all, you may actually heighten the work of Parliament, or you may have further increased the burden of Parliament in terms of how many people they will have to review. That's the first one. From an operational and practical standpoint, I think it does help Parliament to make a better and informed judgment in respect of competing candidates and to make a decision on which candidate should be considered. But again, in terms of the optics, it may also create a sense of a lack of certainty and a lack of focus as far as the appointer is concerned, and in this case, the president. If the president appoints more than one person for a particular office, it creates a sense of the president lacking a certain degree of surety as far as that candidate is concerned. And when presidents do make these appointments, one of the things they also want to put out there is not just the fact of having to just either select one person, but it also represents a vote of confidence. And that's why if, Nanado Dankwa, for example, has been noted for for appointing people and actually justifying reasons for selecting these people.
Well, this time he hasn't done that.
Before the people are even considered by Parliament, he has spoken to the Ghanaian people and told the Ghanaian people that there are justifying circumstances that warranted my selecting this candidate as opposed to all others. So when the president has to appoint or select a number of these candidates, it creates a sense of, I am just trying my luck and I'm not as sure as I actually would like to project. And that could undermine the whole essence of the appointment.
All right, thank you.
The whole optics of the appointment.
Right. Now, Dr. Duce, what do you say in respect of the Spiogabra that Inus of Senu referred to? It took the appointing authority to withdraw that appointment because on the face of it, he was ineligible because at the time, he was not a registered voter. So clearly, there was no point about that. Yes. You, from the way you approach the fisheries issue, what do you think? Because people are saying, like Kofi Bento mentioned, there may be technocrats and what have you at the place, but policy decisions, engagements, policy analysis, analyzing reports, and so on and so forth. Must the person be someone who will be fed by, the technocrats without that person's ability to exercise a certain judgment for herself or himself without the input of a technocrat?
Samson, in answering this, we need to appreciate it within the context of the person's history. Here is the case that the designate, the minister designate, is not a new person on the terrain. In fact, she has won a seat that the party in the past has not been able to win on consecutive occasions. She has held a portfolio in which the president trusted her so much that he wanted her to be in charge of his special initiatives, right?
And deliver
one village, one dam, ambulances. So when you are assessing such a person, you have a basis to assess. Was she able to execute the duty that was given to her in the first 4 years? That should be the starting point. So if the person can provide leadership to the ministry in executing the vision and mission of the president, so be it. And I believe that she's proven to be an action-oriented person. And that is what that ministry needs at this point.
Does it not matter that in the previous life, she was working from the presidency? No. And from the presidency, it's a whole different game from being handed a ministry to manage.
It also tells us that she is capable in terms of project management and execution. And once the persons bring the policy issues as articulated on paper, she will ask practical questions. So when we do this at this point, what is going to be the result? And I believe that she will be able to see through it and appreciate whatever she's going to do. Okay. So I don't think that will be a handicap at all.
All right.
There are technocrats on the ground who are going to do the paperwork. She will ask the right questions, lead them and manage them so that the action aspect of executing projects will then come to the fore when it's good.
So your final comments on this whole thing of the vetting, whether it is useful or it is not useful?
Well, I will say that what amounts to vetting in itself, right? We've been told in engagements and Attorney General that it is not a term of art. So it is left to Parliament to set its own rules and determine what vetting is. But if you were technically looking at the meaning of vetting, it's as if you were going to sieve something and then take the wheat out of the chaff. But that is actually not the essence of vetting. So if Parliament, as our representatives, are going to ensure that there is accountability at that level, they can also do the people a lot of good by giving us openly a priority that these are the things we are going to work on to assess you.
Okay.
So that assessment criteria, if they publish it widely, and then we use it to benchmark people, that would be the best way to go.
Great, but that does not include giving them the questions ahead of the appearance.
Well, I think some questions will need to be given.
Okay.
Because the questions that normally begin with what is fish farming, Please, I will have to go and revise my JHS notes to be able to answer this kind of question.
If you were nominated for that ministry, will your preparation not include understanding?
Definitely not. To know the meaning of what fish farming is, as defined in our basic textbooks, it will never come to your mind at that point. Because your preoccupation will then be what policy considerations would I have to take to be able to change the fishing regime, the seasons, those kind of things. That's why he said it's science. So that will be the kind of focus. So your focus will be on the top, not on the basics of what is fish farming and how fish ponds are constructed per se. So you're going to lead people, and when you're a good leader and bring them together, you'll be able to achieve that result. I think that's where the focus should be.
Right. Now, Anusa, what do you also say? And, you know, people are disappointed in the committee that they have some of their colleagues come before them and they practically don't do anything. They just give them a few minutes and they walk off. But some other minister designates, they spend as many as 6 hours. Godfrey Dame, for example, 6 solid hours. Kojo Nkrumah had such a long time. What's that? And they seem to, you know, agree with PAV answer that this is shameful, shabby charade. It's known as a vetting.
I disagree entirely with the venerable Prof. And also to say that you gave 2 examples. The Attorney General, Minister of Justice designate, and the Minister of Information designate. The Minister of Information is a colleague, member of Parliament. Was my colleague in the 7th Parliament. And he was before his colleagues, but he spent my time there. The Minister for Roads and Highways is a member of Parliament. Look at the questions that he was subjected to. Osler also is a member of
People are disappointed that Adjoa
Safo is a member of Parliament.
Yes.
But Adjoa Safo
was treated with kid gloves.
No. She went there as gender minister designate.
Yeah.
She was, in her previous life, the deputy majority leader
ministry.
and procurement minister working for the presidency. They asked her questions about procurement. I think her answer was very satisfactory to me. She said, look, even though I was procurement minister, the ministry that has supervisory jurisdiction over the public procurement authority is the Ministry of Finance. So if I answer a question like this, what will be the follow-up question? If you answer a question like that, what will be the follow-up question?
So in a case, the members simply didn't have questions.
She's still people telling you that I didn't have supervisory jurisdiction over there.
It is not the case that they sat, and sometimes you can sit together and plan it, that as for this, our colleague, for one reason or the other, please, let's hurry her out. Let's not spend time.
No. I don't think that they plan.
Then you agree that particular questions will not be asked certain members.
No, I don't think they plan it, but it's just human nature.
It doesn't happen?
Prof?
Not at all? It doesn't happen at all?
Dr. Adisa was with
it doesn't happen at all?
He turned out to be my lecturer.
It doesn't happen at all?
Now he's MPP communicator. Anywhere I meet him, because of his disposition, I will treat him in a certain way. I mean, you can't take away the conduct and attitude of members of Parliament towards their colleagues in the vetting process.
There were some of the ministers, the members of the public generally, expected particular questions. Nobody asked anything about those things. Things that has to do with their character, their reputation.
Well, the vetting prior approval is not about the character content of a nominee.
The qualification to be a member of Parliament.
You remember
when you read it out, it includes character content.
The 1992 debates, whether private life, whether your private life should come into your public affairs. So, well, I think that the vetting committee, the appointments committee, has improved significantly over the years. But there is still more room for improvement. But let me state 2 things, because this is a platform that educates people. Samson, the nomination and appointment of ministers of state is not the sole prerogative of the president. It is part of the institutional limitations on the exercise of power by the president under Article 58. Article 58 vests executive authority in the president. But to exercise that authority must be in conformity with the Constitution. So bringing the names of persons he wants to work as minister to Parliament serves as an institutional check on the power of the president to nominate ministers. You get it?
Interesting.
So, I mean, the Constitution is replete with such institutional limitations, procedural limitations, and substantive limitations on the exercise of power by the president.
Okay.
Now, you see, Abochus spoke about capacity, qualification, and credibility, and formal qualification. And we all, as lawyers, know that there are objective and subjective criteria for determining distance. You know, I believe that the formal qualifications lend themselves to an objective criteria for assessing whether the person is otherwise qualified. But credibility and capacity, and that is why there is a lot of debate in the social media, that is quite subjective. Because, you see, and I share his view, it's all about leadership.
The concern,
it's all about leadership.
A part of the concern, I think a major part of the concern on social media and even traditional media is where the appointees are appearing, and that's part of Kofi Bento's concern. They are appearing, you're asking them questions, they say, I am unaware. I am unaware. When I go, if you approve me and I go, I will check. What's that?
Yes, so
if they are unaware,
that is preparation, and that's where I disagree with Dr. Eduse. Now, if you are nominated Minister for Fisheries and Aquaculture,
or Minister for Justice,
can
we relax the
or Minister for Justice, or Minister for Roads, my brother, you have to spend the next few days before your vetting to know as much as possible your sector.
Yeah.
You have to. I have gone through 3 times. You have to. Because the people in the vetting committee need to understand your frame of mind and how you intend to approach policy at the ministry. Because they're going to give you state resources. You cannot come to the vetting committee and treat them with impunity, give me opportunity to go. And no, it's about resources of states.
And a number of the nominees showed that, didn't they?
Yes, so because
including my favorite Governor Dami, who Haruna Idrisu was pushing a law wrongly, not knowing that there had been an amendment, but he was insisting until Godfrey showed him the amendment, and then he said, "I concede."
Godfrey, you can't take it away from him that he was a deputy attorney general. He was very active when he was deputy attorney general, and he has also been a very diligent lawyer. I've had opportunity to appear before, with him in cases. Okay, but
I've done a couple of cases with him.
So you can't take that away from him. But it shows that he prepared. Even with that, he prepared. There were some questions and I didn't agree with him, but he prepared before coming.
Okay.
You understand? Yeah. So I think that those ministers who are yet to come,
he seemed to share the view that you ought not be suffering that prosecution, which some of you think is a sham, and that he was going to study it, and clearly he didn't think that you should be facing court over.
Well, I'm going there on Monday, but
over your comments.
I don't want. I'm going there on Monday because I think that in the criminal prosecution, it is the prosecution that proves your guilt. You don't have a responsibility apart from raising reasonable doubt in their matter. So I'm just going there. But what I'm saying is that those who are yet to come.
From what you heard him say, do you get the impression that this thing will be withdrawn and?
I don't have any impression. I'm prepared. You know, Samson, I spoke to you before even. I don't want to reveal that on. But I'm saying that I don't have I don't think about anything. I just think about Monday I'm going to court.
Okay.
And whatever happens, that's fine with me. But you see,
what's the charge you are facing again?
Conduct conducive to the breach of the peace under Section 207 of the.
All right.
But what I'm saying is that those who are yet to appear,
Now, wait, I need to finish that. There are those who say he shouldn't be pretending. They think he's pretending to be unaware that you are in court and facing this. What do you say to those people who say that? Do you agree with them? Because he was not in charge of criminal prosecutions.
You see, I do not want, Godfrey, I do not want to put him on the spotlight. But I also know that as Attorney General, the police prosecute on the basis of fiat. Because Articles 88 is quite clear. There's a presumption that you are aware.
But again, police can go.
It cannot be a rebuttal.
But again, police cannot be. Again, police can take a process and go to court without the Attorney General knowing.
Because of the fiat.
Yes, and also
because of the fiat.
Something. Yeah. You know, sometimes look at what is happening in my place, Kumawu. Villages where police officers are the ones in charge of prosecution. It is because the Law Officers Act, right, draws powers from the Attorney General for them to be able to prosecute.
That's the fiat.
Yes, and I'm saying that under no circumstance would you stay in Accra and know about prosecution of minor offenses across the board.
That's why I don't want to put him on the
annually, that's why reports are supposed to be sent. But until it's brought, there's no way you will be.
That's why I don't want to put him on that. But I'm just saying that people, nominees sometimes have the tendency, and it is because we have been poo-pooing the work of Parliament, not to prepare to come before the committee. And I will advise committees, nominees who are yet to appear, please spend some time to prepare. It is for your own good. Probably if our Kumsen, my sister, and she's my sister, if she had spent some time just preparing. I know her, she was a teacher. And look at the introductory remarks about what happened in her constituency.
That's the further surprise. People are surprised that she was teaching.
Yes.
And she has a difficulty expressing herself in English.
Well, maybe because you knew that the thing will come on camera and those things. But what I'm saying is that, but look at the introductory comments. She was so fluent, so lucid. She was able to put across exactly what happened in a way that left no doubt in the minds of people. It means that she thought over that several times over.
Right.
But her preparation for the vetting was deficient.
Okay. Thank you. Dr. Abochi and Kofi Bento, in 2 minutes, is this process necessary at all? This vetting, is it necessary? Start with Dr. Abochi. Okay, Kofi, is this necessary at all?
It's absolutely necessary. Indeed, we should be doing a bit more. I hope that somewhere in between the terms, there should be a way of calling back ministers and reflecting some of the things they have said to them. I wanted to correct something that my brother Inusa said. So he said that nomination is not the sole prerogative of the president. Please no.
Nomination appointment.
The appointment process is not the sole prerogative of the president. Yeah. But the nomination is the sole prerogative of the president.
Yeah, he said nomination appointment. We need to make that he brought the two in, nomination appointment.
Yeah, but we should make the distinction because he was seeking to educate.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
The nomination is the sole prerogative of the president, but the appointment is a process that includes parliament.
Right. Dr. Abochi, in 2 minutes or less, is this necessary at all? Should we be doing this?
Well, I think 2 minutes is too long. It's extremely necessary. The vetting process represents a feedback mechanism. The appointment represents public office, an entrance into public office. And therefore, we need to know whether the person being appointed has the requisite competencies and proficiencies and credibility and capacity, as I mentioned. And so it is only feedback that we, as the ultimate appointers, the Ghanaian people are the appointers through the president. We are the ultimate appointers, whether we're satisfied with the person being appointed on our behalf. So it's a feedback mechanism, and it cannot be dispensed.
Thank you very much. We'll take a break. I'll return. I'll share some messages that have come in respect of the vetting with you. And thereafter, we'll go to look at the question of the judgment debts that are staring this country in the face. Well, were we promised that the way to avoid judgment debts was to kick John Mahama out of office? So why are we having to be saddled with judgment debts once again? Did we learn any lessons from the sole commissioner's report, Justice Appel's report, on how to avoid judgment debts. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is NewsFile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. It's brought to you by the candid sponsorship of Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and close as a partner, MTN. Everywhere you go, Ashasi University, educating entrepreneurial and ethical leaders for Africa. Duraplus, where Duraplus goes, water flows. Having mosquito spray and coil, pleasant on humans, tough nightmare on insects. And Upper Foods, it is tasty. DBS Industries, Roberts & Sons Limited, Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider. Now, let's get to deal with the questions of judgment debt. I'll share your messages with you. There are quite a number of them. I'll share them with you very shortly. Okay, let me start with this one. This one from Yakubu Ibn Chambers. He says that, ironically, lawyer Haruna is defending the seemingly clueless Adjo Asafo, who could believe this. These politicians can make us stand alone in the deep sea. And in relation to that message, another message, anonymous, says that with the gender minister's vetting, I am sorry about the total lack of lustrous performance, not even of the nominee, but the whole appointments committee. A sore disappointment. A sore disappointment. Edward Seiram, tutor, says that, what is fish farming? This is a legitimate question. How Akumsin should have been able to define it and take the opportunity to share the history, present conditions, and the future of fish farming in Ghana under her tenure. Kofi Amoa says, which agencies were under Hawa Kumsin's former ministry? What policies was she coordinating, facilitating, aside ambulance, dam, etc. Dr. Odro says, I'm wondering, should the health minister be able to define acute chest syndrome? I'm wondering, what are the limits on technical knowledge? Charles Reku Brobe, Dr. Charles Reku Brobe says that, missing question to all nominees. What do you see as main challenges of your job, and how do you propose to overcome them? Prince Ni Aiku says, Madam Hawa Kumsin's debacle should not be reduced to a mere deficiency in English oratory. She proved beyond reasonable doubt that even if that vetting was held in Twi, Ga, or any local dialect of her choice, she still wouldn't have been able to answer those questions. Okay, so thanks for your messages. Now, let's get to deal with the matters of judgment debt. So, judgment debt has been